Hello and welcome to Kitchen Table Talks. My name is Toni Austin Allen and I am here with Dr. Roy Austin, author of Definitions for Living, a book dedicated to helping you live more effectively and happily, both personally and in your relationships with others. A number of years ago, Dr. Austin compiled numerous articles which he had written to assist his clients into what is now his book, Definitions for Living, making sense of words and ideas that define our lives. Recently, he and I began sitting at our kitchen table and talking about his book, and we became excited about the possibility of sharing our conversations with others who might benefit from them. The podcast you are about to listen to are the product of the recordings we began making of our conversations. We have discussed the book chapter by chapter and have produced this series of podcasts to accompany the printed version of the book, which is now available as an ebook on various publishing websites. Although we believe you will benefit greatly from the podcasts themselves, you will get the most out of them by purchasing the book, reading each chapter prior to listening to the podcast, and having it available to follow along with our conversations. The ebook is available on Amazon Kindle, Barnes & Noble, Scribe, Booktopia, Apple Books, Layman's, and Adlibris. We hope you enjoy our talks at our kitchen table as much as we have, and that your life will be greatly enriched by having shared our conversations with us. All right, we're on chapter 14, and this title of this chapter might surprise a lot of people out there. It's called The Joy of Mediocrity. Now, I want to talk to you about that a little bit because that's not a word that us Americans think is very good here. You know, we graduate from high school, we go to college, some of us, we try to get the best job we can, we try to keep moving upwardly, mobily, in bigger houses and better cars. So this is going to be a really interesting chapter.
Yeah, I think so. and deliberately so, Toni. When I was thinking about this chapter and writing it, I deliberately chose these two words in the title that seem to be so incongruent in the same sentence. The joy, and then the second word of mediocrity. How could that be? How could you enjoy doing anything less than your best?
Right? Isn't that what they just try your best, just do your best. Did you do your best? Then that's good enough. I mean, what does that really mean?
That's right. And this is the pressure that children especially feel, from the parents or teachers or coaches. They say, well, regardless of how it turns out, as long as you know you did your best, it'll be okay. And they don't realize that they're trying to take pressure off of the kid, but that puts a lot of pressure on them. So, because that means the kid has to figure out, did I do my best?
Yeah.
And if I didn't, then that's the bar that I wasn't able to come up to, because if there's any way I didn't do my best, and you can always find a way that you haven't done your best, you could always justify that. Or you could justify that you did do your best, because it's a moving target. And that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit here. This whole concept of best is so vague and unmeasurable in most cases that it puts a lot of pressure on someone to say we're supposed to do our best. The old saying is, if anything is worth doing well, anything worth doing is supposed to be doing well or right or perfect.
Right.
Do your best no matter what you do.
We were watching a reality show last night, and I was kind of shocked because this guy's going off to try this challenge, and his family member says, if you don't win, don't bother coming back. And I'm going, whoa, what pressure?
Not much pressure there, is there? That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
That's right. So I deliberately chose this title as as an attention getter, or I could use the term a little shock value here, to intrigue the reader into getting into this. But the first reaction is usually, Roy, you're crazy. You can't enjoy anything that you've done just mediocrely.
Well, with that said, would you just kind of give us your definition of mediocre? Because as we've talked about in this, especially America, this idea that we're the best, you've got to be the best, then the idea of mediocre does sound and has a negative connotation. Just talk to us about what this really means.
Well, I looked that up. And, I thought I better look up the definition of the word if I'm going to use it in the title.
Right?
Because I'm going to be asked that very question. And so I say that on the second page here, that the dictionary defines mediocre as, quote, of but moderate excellence or ordinary. Another word for it could be average, or something less than the best.
That's very interesting, because most of us are pretty just average and ordinary, But we have the cover of the magazines, we have the superstars, we have the high-level politicians, we got celebrities, and that's who we look at all the time. But most of us, almost everybody's just pretty average and pretty ordinary.
And that's what makes most people feel so bad about themselves, because they're just ordinary, average, or mediocre. They're all synonyms of the same thing. And they feel like that they haven't lived up to their so-called potential, whatever that is, or that they have failed in some way because they are less than the best, or they have done something less than the best, which is nearly always the case, by the way. So that's why so many people have such a low opinion of themselves, because, by definition, 98% of the world are just average folks.
Yeah.
So we're all mediocre, whether we want to admit it or not.
Even if you're at a high level, you can still be mediocre, because there's always going to be somebody higher or better or whatever than I am. A lot of people are.
That's exactly why. And that's why we see so many people just destroy their lives, climbing over the shoulders and the dead bodies of their next door neighbors or their people at work, because if someone builds a house next to me that's worth $500,000, then I've got to build a house that is at least worth $1 million, because I've got to not only keep up with the Joneses, I've got to surpass the Joneses.
Right. Now, you talk in this chapter a lot about the choice that we have. And I would bet that most people think, well, I don't have a choice. I mean, I don't have that kind of talent. Like, I don't know, I'm not even going to name somebody, but this celebrity, I'm never going to be that good, or I'm never going to have the talent, I'll use my profession as, to be as good as Van Cliburn, so I just don't have that choice. So I'm just going to have to settle. This is just who I am. It's like, that's why we have such bad self-esteem. But you talk about that we really do have a choice of what you call the balanced versus unbalanced life. And there again, the connotation of the unbalanced life sounds kind of bad, but you've told me that it's not. It's just a choice. And talk about that balance versus the unbalance.
Oh, certainly. And that is where I do emphasize that between these two lifestyles that we'll discuss in just a minute, about the balanced life or the unbalanced life, that is a choice. That does not mean that the options that are offered to us in life are always balanced with everybody else's choices and options, because that's true. They're not. It's like these kids in school, they'll hear that, America is the land of opportunity, and so anybody can become president of the United States, or you can accomplish anything you want to accomplish if you want it badly enough. That's crazy. That's insane. That's so bad to tell kids that, or anybody that you can accomplish anything you want to accomplish, because our opportunities, our family, our finances, our health, our intelligence, our gifts are all different, and they not only provide us opportunities that may or may not be more advantageous than someone else's, but life also sometimes does not provide us the opportunities and the options and the resources, or the health, or the intellect, or the connections, or the social status to accomplish what we would like to accomplish. And so the options that life gives us are never equal options. We never start off on a level playing field, and we have to accept that. So that's not what I'm talking about, is that we choose what life brings us. That is not true. What I'm talking about here is when, given what options you have to work with the various aspects of life for most people, and I list those in the very first paragraph, the various aspects of life, and I'll just list them here: physical health, mental and educational development, financial security, social and relational skills, spiritual or religious growth and involvement, and leisure activities. Those are the various listings of the areas in which we can achieve and enjoy some degree of satisfaction. So, given those various categories of life, we have here again opportunities and skills and abilities that vary from area to area, but in general, most of us will have to decide how much time, energy, and money we're willing to invest in each of these categories of life. And so, given those categories of life, of how we spend our time, energy, and money, and basically that's all we have to work with, then we have to choose whether we're going to have a life that's somewhat what I call balanced, in the sense that you invest your time, energy, and money in a somewhat fairly equally divided expenditure of those resources that you have among these different areas of your life. Like, for instance, you may want to be a good parent and active in political activities in your community, as well as take good care of your health, advance your education or financial situation. So those are all categories in which you can invest your life in. And so the balanced life says that you spend a somewhat equitable amount of time and energy and money on each of these categories. Now, the unbalanced life is when one chooses to focus their time and energy in life on one or very few of these areas of your life to the expenditure of the others. And that's what I mean by the unbalanced life. And you mentioned the music career as an example. Like if someone decides to become a concert pianist, well, that's going to clearly lead to an unbalanced life because of the dedication it takes of daily practice and effort and total commitment. You do not become a concert pianist by being average at it.
No.
You have to excel at it way above what most other people in the world would ever do. So that's what I mean by the unbalanced life.
Yes, it doesn't really have a negative connotation. It's just a fact. Or if you are a CEO, you're going to need an assistant to handle the phone calls and to pick up your dry cleaning and to do things that you can't possibly do because you're so busy running a business.
That's exactly right. And for instance, a lot of people will make it a priority to make a lot of money. Like if they want to make $10 million before age 40. Well, that's going to lead inevitably to an unbalanced life. It doesn't make it a bad decision, it just makes it a difficult decision to put time and energy into other aspects of life from this list that I just read from. They're not likely to spend a lot of time with their family or with political activities or their health because there's just not enough time in the day, in the year, in the month to spend balancing your life out with other aspects of it if your goal is to make $10 million before you're age 40.
I like what you talk about, though, is that by knowing and looking down the road a little bit, we can actually make these choices. I mean, I've made a choice in the last, I'd say, 7 years of dabbling in a whole lot of different things. And that was a deliberate choice. It can drive me crazy sometimes because I like so many different things.
Right.
But I'm learning to let go of having to be great at them all. And it's softening and it's really quite enjoyable. And that was a choice. It's a compromise because I'm not as good at a couple of things as I'd like to be. But I'm letting go of that need to be. And then if you want to make a ton of money, that is a choice. And I like that idea of really looking at this before you take that route and then you go, oh, I wish I had spent more time with my family. Well, if you wanted to make, $10 million, you're going to have to understand that there is a sacrifice you got to make by doing that.
That's the key. And this is a major point that I bring out several times in the chapter. And that is, in order to avoid, number one, living a very frustrated life because you either cannot excel and be excellent in some particular area, or you have chosen to excel in some particular area, and then you cannot, by definition, have that balanced life, and then you live a frustrated life because it seems as if to a lot of people that just sort of happens to them. They haven't thought it through and thought ahead and planned ahead and made a deliberate, responsible adult choice to live this kind of life. And so as they progress through life, they get not only the frustration, but the sense of, well, did I make the right choice? I don't know. Maybe it's, since I'm unhappy and dissatisfied in some area of my life, then I must have made the wrong decision. And that happens if you've not done your homework ahead of time and thought ahead that I cannot have it all. I have to prioritize what lifestyle I want to live so that I don't have regrets of having made the wrong decision just because I sort of fell into it and didn't think about it ahead of time.
And it's a good thing to remember that we have choice all the time. So maybe you get to the point where you're having regrets. Well, you still have a choice to make a change.
And the change may be very costly and difficult, but
Yes.
you're exactly right. A lot of people say, I feel so burdened down with all the bills I have to pay, and I find myself doing nothing but work, and I don't have any time to go out and play golf, or I don't have time to be active in a book club at the library, because all I do is just get up and go to work because I got so many bills. And that is a choice
Yes.
that you made, whether you were willing to take responsibility for it or not. And like you said, you may, if you're going to balance your life out better, you may have to sell that house that you pay $3,000 or $4,000 a month on for a monthly payment. You don't have to have the house that you're living in. And a lot of people have discovered that. And there are a great many stories out there about people who said, I'm tired of this. I'm going to go build a cabin in the woods, so to speak.
A lot of people have been doing that lately.
Yeah, and that's a choice. So, we can be real victims of circumstances beyond our control. So there are true victim circumstances, like disease can occur, or we can be in an automobile accident,
Or maybe a spouse is you may need to be a parent, or a spouse's caregiver, and you may feel like, oh gosh, I'm stuck in this role. Talk about that a little bit, because that creates a very unbalanced life that you may feel that you are all of a sudden a victim of. I've seen that a lot, and a lot of people burn out and feel resentful, but that was a choice as well, and that's hard to understand sometimes.
That is hard to understand, because people have a difficult time separating true victimhood, which has a little v at the beginning of the word, and falling into the victim role with a capital V, where
it's an identity.
It's an identity, and they get into this poor me, bad me sometimes, unfortunate me, deprived me, and they get bitter and angry and frustrated, and they feel that life has dealt them a bad deal. And the fact is, life does deal a lot of people a bad deal, but there's a difference between it being a true victim and playing the victim role. And the key is, to whatever circumstances life deals out to you, it's important that you say, yes, now how am I going to deal with this so that I don't get bitter because of it? But as the old saying, when life hands us a raw deal, you either get bitter or better. And that's the key. You use your circumstances as best you can with the resources you have to work with to have as good a life as you can, and you don't play the poor me game because life has handed you a raw deal.
And in that case, your life that might have been balanced could all of a sudden become unbalanced. And then if you choose to follow that out of love or obligation or whatever, it is still your choice to then do what you need to help pick up the pieces so that you're not walking into a life of resentment.
Exactly. And you use two good words here, love or obligation, or sense responsibility. Well, when you make a choice to take care of someone, like someone who has a long-term illness or something, it's going to lead to an unbalanced life. And you say, yeah, but I had no other choice because I love this person, and I'm going to fulfill that sense of obligation out of love, or just because that's what my family expects me to do or society expects me to do, and I can't abandon them. Well, a lot of people say, I want to be able to love and I want to fulfill my sense of obligation at no cost.
I want my cake and eat it too.
You cannot love without cost to it. Love is very costly. And so if you choose to love someone, then that's going to motivate you to contribute to their welfare. And it may cost you a lot, but you have to take the responsibility for loving, because a lot of people don't love for that very reason, because it's too costly. Or you may fulfill an obligation. Well, we choose what we feel obligated to do. And so if we obligate ourselves, nobody can obligate us to anything. They can tell us what our obligations are, but
we don't have to follow.
We don't have to follow what someone else tells us. But if we choose to believe something is an obligation, but we don't want it to cost us, and so we feel victimized. Well, I had to do it out of obligation. Now I'm really angry about it. Well, you choose your obligations. Though a lot of people don't want to admit that. They want to play that victim role of poor me. Well, I have to do it out of obligation. No, you don't. It's a choice. And that's what I'm talking about. Whatever you choose to do and whatever lifestyle you choose, you're still responsible for those choices given the options that you have to work with.
Right. And then you have to start making choices about how am I going to do this? You know, it's constant choice making. Constantly.
And it's always a profit loss analysis, benefit cost analysis on every decision we make. And so we'll make decisions to live a certain lifestyle, balanced or unbalanced, but we don't want it to cost us anything.
Right.
We want it to be free. Like you said earlier, I want my cake and eat it too. That's impossible.
Let's talk about the unbalanced life a little bit. And you say there are 5 ways by which most people typically create an unbalanced life for themselves. And I'm going to go over these factors and let you expound a little bit on each one.
Okay.
The first one is choosing too many authorities or some specific authority. What do you mean by that?
Well, you let other people decide for you how you should live your life.
That's what you were saying about the obligations.
Right. And so I'll just sort of quote myself here. You may have been reared to believe that you're obligated to live your life to please others. If so, you may flit frantically from one activity to another in an effort to win the approval of many people, and by so doing, experience a life constantly out of balance. So if someone says, well, you should make a lot of money, or you shouldn't make a lot of money.
I should be a lawyer because my father told me I needed to be a lawyer.
Exactly.
You hear that a lot.
That's a great example. So if you use someone else as an authority on how to live your life, then it could be very, very unbalanced by default, and you think I didn't make that decision because I was sort of forced into it. That's what that first paragraph refers to.
And that is absolutely not true.
That is not true. We're all responsible for our choices.
That's a belief system. All right, the second one is pursuing too many goals at the same time. And I'll go on and read this real quickly. You may have very high expectations of yourself and assume that you are indestructible. You are unwilling to accept your human limitations. You take on a sort of Superman or Wonder Woman identity. You expend great effort, money, and time on everything you attempt and eventually burn yourself out. To survive, you may begrudgingly eliminate some activities altogether, letting various aspects of your life go unattended.
Yeah, and when we have so many expectations of our lives, then we spread ourselves thin, and that's where burnout comes in. And so sometimes we lead this unbalanced life because we have too many goals, and we haven't thought it through about which goals are more important than others, and so it's sort of a by default aspect of life that you haven't thought through, and you're just running around like a chicken with its head cut off, as the old saying goes, and you lead a very unbalanced life, but you live it frustrated because you didn't think it through and make some tough decisions.
I think women had a lot of trouble, and still do, when women got a lot of freedom to go to work and have high-powered jobs and be liberated, quote unquote. There was already the expectation of being a great mom, keeping the house clean, always looking good and wearing your pearls. And then we were liberated, and then we were expected ourselves to take on the role of CEO, starting a cottage industry and, getting out there and being politically active. But we still had the old ways of thinking. I've still got to keep the house clean. And I mean, women have really struggled with this over quite a number of decades.
Yeah, for that very reason, is that they didn't set priorities, and so they're running around trying to do it all really, really well, and they drive themselves crazy, and they feel like failures for no good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, having too few goals through lack of opportunity. I want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, like I talked about earlier, you may not have the opportunity to have this balanced life. You may not have the resources, like someone who happens to have been born with a physical limitation, and they can't pursue a certain career that they want, or they don't have the opportunity to be married and have a family, or because of a death in the family, they had to stop their educational program and go to work to pay the family bills. So sometimes circumstances do not give us that many good options to have a balanced life, and so we are forced into having an unbalanced life because we don't have a broad range of opportunities to do well or moderately well in any of those circumstances. So sometimes life itself prevents us from having an unbalanced life or a balanced life.
Yeah. The next one, you talk about the fear of failure, which is almost synonymous with perfectionism, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yeah. If you think you have to do the best at everything, then you may limit your options. Like, for instance, if you want to have a good sports experience, but you're not very good at it,
right?
And so you say, well, if I can't be on the A team, and I don't want to be on the red shirt team of life athletically, then I just won't do it at all if I can't do it my best. And so they rob themselves of a balanced life because they can't do their best at everything, and so they limit themselves to only what they can do really, really well, and that leads to an unbalanced life.
But if it's a choice to do that, maybe not out of a fear of failure, but of a fear of I'm really good at this and I want to be the top. That's not a bad thing, right?
That's not a bad thing. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Believing you do not deserve happiness.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that you could do that you really enjoy doing and would be happy doing it. Like a person who loves being out in nature, and it makes them really, really happy to be in nature and hike and mountain climb and all that, and it makes them happy, but there's something inside them that says, well, I'm not deserving of being happy. I shouldn't be happy. Something's wrong with me, and I feel guilty if I'm enjoying life, so I have to deprive myself of whatever brings happiness to my life, because it would be wrong to do it. I just don't deserve to be happy, and so they limit their options to doing things only that make sure they're not happy, and then they don't feel guilty.
Yeah, you say this in the third paragraph of this section so well. You may also be afraid of living a happy, well-rounded life, not because of some unrealistic guilt, but because of some mistake you have made and about which you feel real guilt. If, for instance, you are divorced as a result of your own destructive behavior, you may believe that you no longer have the right, quote unquote, to another chance at marriage. So we identify too much with our past and our past mistakes and the stories that we are telling ourselves.
So we have to punish ourselves, see, by depriving ourselves of a good balanced life that would help us really enjoy life. Like a lot of people, like you said, if you get a divorce, then I don't deserve to be married again and find someone who loves me and cares about me because of my terrible mistakes in the past. So therefore, I have to deprive myself of having that part of my life, happy relationships, because I don't deserve it anymore.
Mm-hmm. You do say there is a way to enjoy an unbalanced life. And I think that from our talks thus far, I am starting to realize it doesn't just have to be the unbalanced life of a concert pianist or a celebrity. There is enjoyment, I'm sure, for them in that. But there are many other ways to have an unbalanced life and enjoy it. Can you talk about that?
Yes, like you can choose to be a good family person. Mm-hmm. You want to put a lot of your time and energy and money into marriage and children, and having vacations with them, and camping with them, and hanging out with them, and watching TV together, and jogging together, and you love family time, and you want to have a really good, happy marriage, and so you work really, really hard on your marriage and spend time with each other and nurture that primary relationship. Well, that's going to cost you time, energy, and money to do that. But so that means you may not be willing to put a lot of money into your career because it would take you away from the family. Mm-hmm. And you want to spend time with the kids and go to their baseball events and their piano recitals. But that takes time, and therefore you won't be able to spend as much time on the golf course every Saturday and Sunday with your buddies that you'd also like to do. So it's going to cost you, but as long as you make it a deliberate choice of your values, then you won't feel cheated or angry or frustrated or victimized by your choices, because you thought it through and said, being a good family person is the most important thing in my life, and I'm willing to pay the price for it.
I'm even thinking about this. I have a lot of friends I know right now with chronic health problems. That's an unbalanced life.
Yes, definitely.
And I have one friend in particular with MS who had a very big career that took a lot of her time, and now she can't do that. But she's doing meditation. She's resting. She's seeing therapists and counselors. She's seeing spiritual teachers. She's doing the work with friends in our peer group. She's spending time with her loved ones. That is, it's an unbalanced life in that she can't have a career. She can't go out and do the things she used to do. So that illness, she is that little v, a victim.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
But she's choosing not to be, and it's work. It's a lot of work, but choosing not to be the big V victim.
She's not going to play the victim role.
Right.
Yeah.
And that takes, I'm sure, because I haven't had chronic health problems, but I'm sure that takes a lot of stamina and emotional and mental work. But she's choosing to live a rich life.
Given the options she has to work with.
That's right.
And that makes all the difference in the world. If you see it as a choice, I'm going to make the best of the situation I have to work with and not be angry and frustrated and resentful about it.
Yes.
I don't have to like it, and I won't like it, but I'm not going to play the victim role here and play poor me. Life has handed me a raw deal. And I know it's easy for you and I to sit here and talk about this academically, and it's as you said, it's a lot harder to work in real life to have that PMA, that positive mental attitude. But if you don't, you're going to be a miserable person.
Yeah. Let's move on to the balanced life. And you talk about how can I create a balanced life. I personally have known you all my life, and I think you created a beautiful balanced life. How did you come to make that choice in your life? How did you come to create that in your life?
Well, that's a good question, Tony. But I think it has to do with what we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. Is that along the way, like everyone else, given the options I had, and I had some limited options, and that other people had better than I did, and then I had some nice beneficial options in life that other people have not had. So, it works both ways, but given the options that I had, I decided that I wanted to enjoy a life that was fairly well balanced, instead of focusing on doing my best at any one thing. Just like in my career, I chose not to do my best that I could have done as a psychotherapist, because I was not willing to sacrifice family life for that or my health. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be active in community activities and church and sports and motorcycling and woodworking and hobbies. And I knew I could not put as much energy into my career and be the very best, whatever that is, therapist I could be, because it would cost me too much. So I just thought ahead and decided I'm not going to do it. And my wife and I talked about it any number of occasions, that we were not willing to pay the price that it would take for me to be highly successful as a therapist and make a lot of money and have a great reputation and write a whole lot of books, to get them published and all that, simply because that would make the rest of my life pretty miserable. And I was not willing to sacrifice my family or my health or my social activities or my hobbies in order to make that happen. So she and I sat down on numerous occasions at different junctures in our life, and we decided together, and then I decided personally I'd rather live a balanced life than highly successful at any given aspect of life.
And I'd like to be clear here that does not mean that one isn't going to be successful. We're talking about that all or nothing kind of success, where you give it your all, where everything's focused on that. Because, like, I know in the last few years, I'm not practicing piano 5-6 hours a day, which it would take to be really, really good. But I enjoy when I do practice. I'm not a great artist, but I love painting, and I'm pretty good at it. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be bad at everything when you choose this joy of mediocrity.
No.
It just means that you can be successful at a good number of things, but you're not going to be competitive so to speak, and try to one-up everybody around you.
Exactly. And I think anytime we're talking about success or failure at anything, it is important to add the descriptive adjectives in front of it so that it's not all or nothing thinking. Mm-hmm. I'm either unsuccessful or I'm successful. Well, that doesn't describe the full picture of what life is really about. That's black and white thinking. So I chose to be moderately successful, mediocrely successful, rather than extremely highly successful. It's all on a continuum, just like failure is concerned. Someone says, well, failure is not an option. That's crazy. Of course it's an option. I fail to do things all the time. Mm-hmm. When I choose to sit at home and watch television, for instance, or just sit in front of the fire and drink hot chocolate, I am failing at everything else that I could be doing instead. I'm failing at that moment to go out and climb a mountain. So in order to succeed at one thing, you have to fail at everything else that you could have been doing.
Right. And you talk about that in the bullet points here of creating a balanced life. It says, I like what you say, give failure a new meaning.
Yeah. We fail at something when we don't do it, or we don't do it as well as we wanted to. Mm-hmm. But failure is just part of life. It's a learning experience. It's something that we use to grow from. And if we want to do better, then we, as the old saying goes, you need to learn from your mistakes.
You say, do not use your successes and failures to determine your worth or self-esteem. That's huge.
Because then you're in real trouble, because we fail and succeed all the time. You cannot not do that. And so if your sense of self-worth or self-esteem or self-love, that's all synonymous, is connected to your successes or your failures, then your sense of self-worth is going to be on a constant roller coaster. Mm-hmm. And it goes up and down based on whatever it is you're measuring it by on that given day or on that given activity.
Well, in your description of your own decisions, you've touched on several of these factors to become more balanced. Let's go over them real quickly.
Okay.
It says, make yourself your own authority. Stop letting other people tell you how to live. I like that. So if that father says, you need to become a lawyer, you can remember that you are an autonomous person. You can make that choice. You may not feel like it. Mm-hmm. And I had friends who said my parents wouldn't pay for college if I didn't go to that college, or if I didn't major in that and become that. Well, it's still a choice.
It's still a choice. We have to take responsibility for it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Limit your goals to what you can realistically achieve.
Oh, by the way, these bullet points are just the opposite of the previous bullet points that we went through earlier about having a lifestyle that you don't really think through and deliberately choose. Mm-hmm. So these are the counterbalances to the ones that we just went through earlier.
Oh, I see.
That you'll notice.
So this is how you can make your choices. This is how to prepare better.
Yes. You limit your goals to what you can realistically achieve. Mm-hmm. And don't set yourself up by setting too many goals that you don't have the time, energy, the money, or the motivation to accomplish. And that's okay. But if you want to have a balanced life, then make sure that whatever you do, you actually can achieve it. Like if you want to lose weight, you want to improve your health, well, you have to make your goals realistic. Mm-hmm. If you say, well, I want to be able to compete in a weightlifting contest and win first, In a weightlifting contest, I want to be that strong and that healthy that I can do that. Well, that's not going to allow you to have a balanced life, because that's unrealistic. You cannot achieve being a prize-winning weightlifter and have a balanced life with it, because that takes extreme dedication to that particular sport. And so if you're going to have a balanced life, you have to be willing to live with less than the best.
You know, it's so funny, when I was teaching piano, when I would teach adults, and I would be correcting them on something or helping them to make something more musical, their response was, I'd say 4 out of 5 people, adults, not kids, they would say, well, I'm not going to become a concert pianist. Or they'd even come to their first interview. You need to know that I don't have aspirations to be a concert pianist. And I'm looking at them and they're 75. And I'm thinking, okay, where's your head in this?
Yeah, right, exactly.
You can still enjoy this. You can still make progress.
Yep.
But I didn't have that expectation for you either.
Isn't that funny?
It is.
Oh, that's great.
You are not bound by your past.
Yes, do not let your limited exposure to life's experiences stop you from creating your own opportunities. Like a lot of people say, well, in my family, there wasn't enough money or motivation or encouragement for me to go to college and get a degree. So therefore, I don't have the opportunity to get a higher education. Well, that's not true. You can always sign up for a free or low cost course in any community college you want to. There are thousands of them around, so you can advance your education, even though it's not the best education you could have gotten. There's no reason for you to say, well, since I wasn't able to go to college, then I might as well forget about improving myself educationally.
Exactly. And we've already talked about give failure a new meaning. And then this last one, give yourself permission to be happy.
Now that is the ultimate key all along, is that this is where the title comes back around, Joy of Mediocrity. If you say, well, I can't be happy at what I do unless I do my best at it, well, then you're not going to be happy 90% of the time.
Right.
Because if people are honest, we could all, if you really stop thinking about it, whatever we do, we could always have done better at it by expending more time, more energy, more money, but we just weren't willing or able to pay the price for it. So if you say, well, my happiness depends on being highly successful at whatever it is that I do, then you're going to be miserable most of the time. And that's a crazy limitation to one's happiness. And so giving ourselves permission to be happy, even though we accomplish things poorly, averagely, or highly successfully, whatever it is, enjoy what you're doing. I take skiing as a good example for me. I learned really quickly that I am not a skier. And it was not a pleasant experience for me. I hated the cold, the snow, and was never good at it. I was always falling. But then I had opportunity to do some skiing many years ago when I was younger. And as I thought back on it, there was the beauty of the mountains. I was with friends. I was with my wife. We were going up and down the slopes, falling down, laughing about it, coming down to at the bottom of the slopes and going in and having a cup of hot chocolate and talking about the day and enjoying the experience of it. And I was glad I did it. I found out what I didn't want to do anymore, so I didn't have to wonder if I would like it. So there's a lot of benefits to me being a lousy skier, that I was able to enjoy because of so many other pleasures that it brought me. And so just because you're not really good at something doesn't keep you from prevent yourself from enjoying doing it as well as you could, or just having the experience of having done it, to learn more about yourself and to enjoy some side benefits from it.
Yeah, it's like this whole American thing about being upwardly mobile. We always think of that in terms of job and house, but I remember being on a softball team, and I loved my little softball team, and we were terrible. And I got upwardly mobile and went to the higher level where all the good athletes were, and I did not enjoy it. I wanted to go back to the other team, and I thought, oh, this upwardly mobile softball team is not what I want. I want fun.
You got it. You got it. So if we give ourselves permission to be happy, then we can have joy of mediocrity and not have regrets or second guess ourselves or be miserable just because we're not doing our best in everything.
I'd like to read, finally, when you're making this choice of should I seek a balanced life or possibly the unbalanced one, because boy, early on particularly, making that choice, but you talk about taking the full responsibility for this choice. And is it okay if I just read these two?
Yes, please.
Number 1, it says, by responsibility I mean, accept the reality that there is a cost related to either choice. Carefully evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of each lifestyle and deliberately decide one. Do not allow yourself to just slip into or be pressured into a balanced or unbalanced life when it is not what you want. And then number 2, understand that when you make your choice, others may be significantly affected by that choice. Include them in the decision process or be willing to pay the price of what it may do to those relationships. So if you want to say anything more about that or conclude this conversation, I open the floor to you.
I think this is sort of a good way of summarizing it. First of all, it's important to understand that whether you live a balanced life and do a lot of things fairly well or even poorly, and some of them very well, there's going to be mediocrity or average performance in all of those, simply because you've chosen not to focus on one or two. And the same is true if you choose to live an unbalanced life. Is if you do, then a whole lot of other things are going to be done only averagely or poorly. So it doesn't matter. You just have to face the reality that we live with mediocrity all the time. And not make it a bad thing, but just a fact of life. It doesn't prevent you from enjoying all those, and some of you won't enjoy it all, but you can enjoy learning about yourself, like I said earlier. So don't feel like a failure or guilty for being so-called mediocre in life. It's inevitable. It's unavoidable.
Because I'm going to interrupt real quickly because we don't think about this, but the people who are living at the top of their game in acting, movie stars, politicians, academic wizards, they may look good. We see that side of them, but that other side of them may be really hurting. Their family life might be really suffering.
And often does, of course.
Or if they're an international model, they don't get to go out and get ice cream,
Exactly.
They've made their compromises, and so they do have a lot of mediocrity in their lives. We just aren't privy to that.
Or we just don't want to look at it. We just want to focus. We're taught to focus on their so-called successes and then envy them and feel like failures ourselves because we're not highly successful. But they were willing to pay the price for it, and we just don't see the price that they're having to pay. So we think that they're wonderful and highly successful, but we don't know the cost that it invariably brings to a person's life to focus on one or two things in their life. Mm-hmm. And a few of them would be very, very happy with that because they've gone through this process themselves and decided to live that kind of life, and they are willing to pay the price, and they thoroughly enjoy the limelight and the success. And so there's a few of them that are like that because they did their homework.
Right. That's the key right there.
That's the key.
Do your homework.
And then secondly, while you're making these decisions, that it is important, if you're in relationships with anybody, and most of us are, we do have to take other people's into account when we're making these decisions about the life that we're living. And that's why I talk so much with my wife about it over many years, and that is because I knew that whatever choices I made would affect her directly. So she and I had to agree that we were willing to sacrifice a lot of money in order to have a happy home life, or to be healthy, or to be active in other activities. So it does affect other people. So it's only a mark of wisdom and love and caring and compassion to take other people's lives into effect, because we do not live in a vacuum. Like John Donne said, no man is an island.
Right.
And so we have to take other people into account when we're choosing what kind of a lifestyle we're going to live, because it will affect them as well.
Well, this has been a really, I think, it was a short little chapter, but we had a lot to talk about. And I think that's because of our culture.
Yes.
And the myths that we live in this culture.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of the more important topics of all, is to learn to have joy in your life without putting the pressure of it. I can't be joyful unless I'm doing the best at everything I can do. Mm-hmm. That's just absolutely crazy, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and we'll be discussing understanding motivation in the next chapter.
And that's a good one. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. Again, Dr. Austin's ebook is available on Amazon Kindle, Barnes & Noble, Scribe, Booktopia, Apple Books, Layman's, and Adlibris. We look forward to having you join us for our next podcast.